If you had asked me if I ever played a musical instrument, I would have to admit that there was a period when I was growing up where I did attempt to play the violin. Uh, Somehow I relate that to the fact that every Jewish family with a son growing up would try to get the new Yehudi Minuhin or Yasha Heifetz. I really don't remember exactly how I made the connection, but I found myself taking lessons from a teacher in high school at the time, and I would play in the school orchestra. Of course, that meant that I had to practice. I remember that the practice time was 30 minutes, though I don't remember how long or how many times a week I was expected to do that. I didn't like to practice. I cheated. My mother, who would listen to me while she did some kitchen jobs, I would tell her, yes, 30 minutes. And she would say, are you sure it was 30 minutes? And I stuck to my estimate. I said, yes, 30 minutes. The lessons by my teacher were not very productive. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't understand music. And I just went through the what looked like a lesson, but I didn't derive anything from it. As part of my lessons, I played the violin, if I can use the word played, in the school orchestra. There were 6 chairs, and I was chair number 6. I remember that one time the orchestra was practicing. Our musical director was Arthur Davenport. He had played the tuba with John Philip Sousa and his band, but he knew most other instruments. At one time during practice, he said, stop everybody. I want to listen to the violins. Number 1, play this few measures. And the first seat violinist played it, and Mr. Davenport was satisfied. Then play the same thing at second chair, and the second chair did okay. And then the third chair did okay. And then the fourth chair played. Meanwhile, I'm sweating, I'm anxious. I know that if he calls on me, I'll probably get up and leave. Anyway, he didn't call on chair number 5 or me at chair number 6. He seemed to understand that if he had 4 good violinists, chairs 5 and 6 just sort of filled out the orchestra. So I was saved. I continued the attempt to practice to be a violinist of some kind, but it never worked out. In truth, I was left with not knowing how to play the violin, but I began to appreciate music. And my next effort was to go into Pittsburgh to Kaufman's department store and play records from their record department. I did it like this. I had no transportation, but Kaufman's had a bus that made the circle coming probably to Ambridge, which was across the river from Aliquippa, then to Aliquippa, and then back to Pittsburgh. There was no charge. They knew which customers to make the trip. Customers could make the trip themselves, or they could simply give the driver a piece of merchandise to return, or have a piece of merchandise delivered to them. So I would take the bus into Pittsburgh, where the bus would leave me off at Kaufman's at the corner of Smithfield and Fifth Avenue, probably one of the busiest corners in Pittsburgh. I went upstairs to the record department and I asked the clerk for an album, a record that I wanted. I began to ask for records, violin concertos or piano pieces, piano concertos, and then later of orchestral pieces. I remember asking for a Brahms second piano concerto. I loved Brahms. It was melodious and it was nice for me to follow him. I would take the record out, go to a small booth, maybe a little smaller than a telephone booth, put the record on the turntable and start it, and then drop to the floor. If I was lucky, there was a brochure talking about the composer and talking about the history of the piece. It was unusual, but the first few measures of the second piano concerto were printed out. And so it was easy for me to follow that. It was simple, but the notes stuck with me. What a lovely piece. Mother noticed that I went into Pittsburgh and she asked me what I did, and I told her that I wanted to listen to music. This was in the midst of the Depression, but Mother began to save her money or took money that she had set aside for other reasons. And one day, a large piece of furniture was delivered to the house. It was probably 8 feet long. At one end was a radio. At the other end was a record player. When the drawers and doors were closed, it looked like a nice piece of furniture, and actually it was. was made by Stromberg Carlson. They made top grade record players and radios. At that point, I started going downstairs to the cellar, go over to the pusher basket of apples and select one, go back upstairs, lie down on the living room floor next to the record player radio, and listen to music. I would stick my head in the speaker. Once Bob Shamovitz came in to find me eating apple and listening to music. He said, "Why do you stick your head in the speaker?" I said, "I want to hear every note, even if it's a violin concerto, piano concerto, or some orchestral piece." So this is what I got from my time with the violin. I didn't learn to play it, but I learned to appreciate music.